Michael Flynn suggests President Trump comes forward with martial law, and if he takes that suggestion, by the way, I am out. 100% out. Barack Obama is, for whatever reason, relevant again, so we'll talk a bit about what's going on with that. Dr. Fauci is named among People Magazine's 2020 People of the Year, and another high-name company is leaving California. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, folks. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar. We've got a bunch of stuff to get to today because this whole year just keeps getting more and more and more bizarre. I don't know if any of this is serious anymore. I think we are in peak reality show. And we've actually got some serious policy stuff to talk about too, but just this top headline, the one that I titled the show after, this is peak reality show at this point. This is CNN coming out trying to push something, possibly, I don't know, in concurrence with the Trump administration, to try and sell more commercials. I can't call this real life anymore. The writers at Federal Apprentice are doing whatever they can to sell more commercials to either get you excited for season 5 or get you excited for the end of the series. And I really don't know what's just happening anymore at this point. It's so bizarre. But I will tell you that if Trump takes Flynn's advice, I'm out. I'm done. I voted for Trump. But we'll get into that in just a second. Before we get into anything else, I want to start you guys with a little bit of a joke here because, well, I found it disappointing, to say the least, and I figured you guys would like it too. Dan Rather tweeted out just after we got off the air yesterday. Dan Rather tweeted out, "Why is the Trump White House suddenly a very polite place to work? Everyone's going around saying, 'Pardon me.'" Wah, wah. Yeah, that one fell flat. I thought you guys would enjoy it though. Before we get into the news though, I want you to come over there and hang out with some of my buddies as well. Head on over to freedomscoop.com. Freedomscoop.com is going to be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs, where we carry great shows such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Generational Gap, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The Freckles and Brit Show, and The R-Rated Conservative. Come on over, check out our website, pick up some of our swag, and help us support great creators. All right, moving into the stocks, it looks like everything stayed down throughout the majority of the day and then just suddenly had an upturn at the end. The futures look like they're going to be flat coming up according to the news articles that I picked because nobody knows, once again, what's going to happen, and people are wondering whether or not we are going to get that stimulus or not. It's that sweet, sweet stimulus that keeps getting promised and is never going to come, hopefully. Instead, we can just open up the economy and get everybody back to work because it is time to get us back up to that work. And by the way, I don't have anything on the presser from yesterday because I haven't listened to it. I found out about it about 20 minutes ago. I heard rumblings about it yesterday, but I wound up working 12 hours yesterday. I haven't heard a word of it. And by the way, I do need to answer Alan Lewis Jewen's question too, is I do sleep. But yeah, I haven't seen the presser yet. We'll probably talk about that tomorrow after I've actually had a chance to listen to it and know what was going on in it. From what I hear, it was pretty spicy. From what little bit I've heard about it, but let's get into the news, starting with Investors Business Daily. From Ed Carson, Dow Jones Futures, CrowdStrike leads 3 earnings breakouts. China delistings, bill goes to Trump. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to touch that one either. But let's see what's going on with that. Dow Jones Futures and S&P 500 futures tilted higher Thursday morning, while NASDAQ futures rose slightly. Recent IPO Snowflake, CrowdStrike, Zscaler, Okta, and Elastic reported earnings after the close, with all 5 software stocks near buy points. Tesla stock rose late on a new analyst upgrade. The stock market rally erased losses Wednesday as top Democrats signaled hope for a stimulus deal soon. House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer said he planned to meet with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell on a stimulus deal with hopes for an agreement by the end of this weekend. Notably, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Charles Schumer said a $908 billion bipartisan stimulus proposal released this week should be the basis of talks. Democrats had insisted on a $2.2 trillion stimulus deal, while Senate Republicans wanted a $500 billion package. Both Hoyer and McConnell have suggested that December 11th would be a deadline for a stimulus deal this year. December 11th is when the current government funding expires, and we go back to that fucking bullshit. The House late Wednesday approved legislation that would require Chinese companies such as Alibaba, Pinduoduo, Neo, or Xpeng stock that trade on the U.S. to submit to U.S. accounting oversight or face delisting. The Senate already overwhelmingly approved the China stocks delisting legislation, which will now go to President Trump's desk. President Trump is expected to sign it, the White House said. Beijing bars Chinese companies from foreign accounting oversight. However, the bill wouldn't require delisting for 3 years and leaves a lot of discretion to the Treasury Department. So far, investors don't seem to be too worried about the Chinese stock delisting threat, because Beijing Biden will come in and dismantle that shit, and then he'll get paid very, very handsomely from China. On Wednesday, China electric vehicle stocks Neo, Xpeng, and Li Auto rebounded from sharp early losses in tests of their 21-day exponential moving averages. Neo stock rose 5.8% and Xpeng nearly 7%, while Li Auto dipped 0.3%. Li Auto joined Neo and Xpeng in reporting strong November sales, though it also announced a new stock offering. Tesla fell 2.7% on Wednesday, but found support at a short-term moving average. After the close, Goldman Sachs upgraded Tesla stock to a buy point with a 780 price target. Tesla stock rose nearly 5% on Thursday. Software had a tough session, partially due to Salesforce.com tumbling following earnings and its announcement that it's buying Slack. But several others retreated, including Snowflake, CrowdStrike, Okta, and Zscaler stock, ahead of their results. Snowflake stock fell after it reported a wider-than-expected loss in its first earnings report since its September IPO. Cybersecurity plays CrowdStrike and Zscaler jumped, signaling possible breakouts, while Okta also advanced. Search software provider Elastic stock also popped, suggesting a move to a buy point. Tesla is on the IBD leaderboard, along with Salesforce and Pinduoduo. Pinduoduo is on Swing Trader. Alibaba and Salesforce are on IBD long-term leaders. On the futures, Dow futures were just above fair value. S&P 500 futures tilted higher. NASDAQ 100 futures climbed 0.3%. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So that's what we're seeing coming up off the stocks here. Looks like a flat day, but of course, we've got President-elect Biden. We can't let the stocks go down. That would mean that the market would crash under a Democrat president. We can't have that unless we can somehow pin it to the evil orange man. Let's see what CNBC has to say real briefly. Real briefly, because we got a bunch of other stuff to get to today. So, real briefly from CNBC. Stock futures are flat a day after the S&P 500 notches another record, from Yoon Lee and Jesse Pound. U.S. futures were flat on Thursday following a record high for the S&P 500 as investors monitored stimulus talks and new economic data. Futures contracts tied to the Dow Jones Industrial Average rose just 10 points. S&P 500 futures were flat, while NASDAQ 100 futures rose 0.3%. Investors awaited initial claims Thursday morning, which will offer a final reading on the job market before Friday's major jobs report. Economists surveyed by Dow Jones expect 780,000 new jobless claims, roughly unchanged from the prior week. Excuse me. I bet I have a little bit of the commie coof here. That's what it sounds like in my throat. But it looks like right now we have no idea what's going to happen here. They're waiting to see how many people go with new unemployment, if the stimulus comes, and what the software companies are going to do. So Nobody has any idea is basically what's going on with the stock market, which has been what's been going on with the stock market for at least the 36 years that I've been alive. All right, let's get into the news here. Starting with Business Insider, Trump's former national security advisor shared a message asking the president to suspend the Constitution, impose martial law, and hold a new election. From Sonam Sheth. I'm going to tell you right now, if I hear the words martial law, I will stand side by side with the progressives. I'm done at that point with the president. I will stand shoulder to shoulder with the progressives if a president suspends the Constitution. Because that is what I've been fighting for. From the moment I started getting into politics and started commenting on it, was the preservation of the Constitution. And this may be blown completely out of proportion too, but let's see what Sonam Sheth has to say. Former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn shared an ad this week calling on President Trump to suspend the Constitution, declare martial law, and have the military hold a new election. The ad came from Tom Zawistowski, the president of the right-wing Ohio activist group, called We the People convention. In the ad, Zawistowski asked Trump to exercise the extraordinary powers of his office and declared limited martial law to temporarily suspend the Constitution and civilian control of these federal elections in order to have the military implement the national revote that reflects the true will of the people. No! What do we know about government officials? If you give government officials power, they don't give it back. Furthermore, if the government officials that we like do give it back, then the ones that we don't like look at the actions as a precedent and say, hey, we could do that too. How does that fucking sound, Harry Reid? No. The government does not give power back. The government does not give power back. Fact check. Zawistowski's demand is not based in reality. The president does not have the power to unilaterally cancel, delay, postpone, or change the date of an election. That is not true, actually. He does. If there is, I believe it's Order 77 is what it's called. We've talked about it on this show before. We've talked about it on the Red Net show before. Yeah, he actually does. In case there is some kind of emergency where they can't get out to the polls to ensure that the government continues. So, no, Zawistowski is wrong. Even if he declares martial law, as Business Insider previously reported, that power lies with Congress. No, it doesn't. You poor, simple idiot. W was the one that put that one into place, and then Barack put more executive action in to cement this even further. No, you dumb, simple summer child. That power is there. We've covered it. Declaring martial law also does not suspend the Constitution, and the military has no role in administering elections. Even if it did, it would not be able to implement a national revote because of the right to vote, as not specified in the Constitution or by a federal statute. What? Somebody on the left has said that? I mean, we all know it. All of us who have read the Constitution know it's there, but that's not the propaganda that they're sending out to all of their people marching in the street saying, we have a right to vote. No, he's absolutely correct on that. There is no right to vote in the Constitution. It is a privilege. The November general election also reflected the true will of the people. No, that's not true either. In addition to notching a 306 electoral college votes, the candidate needs 270 to win. President-elect Joe Biden, who is not president-elect, won the national popular vote with nearly 81 million votes compared to Trump's 74 million. Citation needed, please. Because, once again, you have to explain to me how, come on, man, set records both in the popular vote nationwide overall, but also set massive records in Atlanta, Madison, Detroit, Philadelphia, Phoenix, and Las Vegas, while underperforming Hillary Clinton in almost every other major blue area. So I'm going to need a citation on that one. Flynn shared the WTPC ad in a tweet and tagged several Trump-supporting lawyers and media personalities. "Freedom never kneels except for God," he wrote. And that is the tweet that was dropped into the Discord, but I was already planning on talking about this anyway. The former National Security Advisor was recently pardoned after pleading guilty to lying to the FBI as part of the Bureau's investigation into Russia's interference in the 2016 U.S. election. Before that, Flynn was a frequent surrogate for Trump on the 2016 campaign trail and made headlines for encouraging chants of "lock her up," referring to former Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton, who has not been charged with any crime. Now, Flynn is one of several people in Trump's orbit who have amplified unfounded claims in recent weeks that the 2020 election was stolen from Trump. It probably was. There was an agenda at play. There was widespread voter fraud, and the Democratic Party conspired with big media to rig the election in Biden's favor. Those dirty riggers. And then they're just going to keep pushing on to the left-wing talking point. But no, they are talking about doing martial law. And Zawistowski, if you really believe that the president doesn't have the power to unilaterally cancel, delay, or postpone the election, then yeah, you and I need to sit down and have a serious talk about the unique evil of George W. Bush. Because he absolutely does. I don't like that he has that power, but he absolutely does. And guess what? The coronavirus is a national emergency. You guys have said so yourself. But yes, if martial law is declared for any reason whatsoever, I'm done. No, we're not doing this shit. We are not doing this shit. And I will temporarily suspend my differences with progressives to make sure that one of their idiot candidates can't do the same fucking thing. All right, with that, let's keep going. From Fox News. Pro-Trump attorneys Sidney Powell, Lynn Wood urged Georgians not to vote in Senate runoffs without changes. Why? Why do we let these people near microphones? I mean, okay, Lynn Wood, you're a decent guy for going pro bono with Kyle Rittenhouse. And the Covington kid, Nick Sandman, was it? You're a decent guy for that. But stop fucking talking, you idiot. Let's see what these guys have to say. I need to clean my glasses. I'll have to do that if we're off camera. No wonder I can't read. From Thomas Barabi. Pro-Trump attorneys Sidney Powell and Lynn Wood urged Georgians not to participate in a runoff vote that will determine the control of the Senate in January until state officials address unsubstantiated claims that President-elect Joe Biden won the White House through voter fraud. Powell and Wood are not working for the Trump campaign, no fucking shit, in an official capacity, but have waged legal battles on his behalf. Speaking to the president's supporters at a press conference in Atlanta, Powell said the state residents should not vote until Georgia overhauls its procedures and ends the use of Dominion voting machines. No. I would encourage all Georgians to make it known that you will not vote at all until your vote is secure. And I mean that regardless of party, Powell said. We can't live in a republic, a free republic, unless we know our votes are legal and secure. Let me break this down for you, Sidney. Because, Sidney, you have no idea what you're talking about. Sidney. And, Sidney, I've told numerous people, even before you got to this point, that we should sit back and question, Sidney, what the Kraken was, Sidney. Now, in the Senate, there's talk about end the filibuster, pack the court, and a slew of other things. that progressives in the Senate have said that it's time to do. Now, at this point, Joe Manchin has offered himself up to be a stopgap against that. Thank you, Joe Manchin, for that. But if he somehow gets pressured into one of these things, pack the court, suspend the filibuster, a slew of other things that they're planning that we don't even know about, then we're in a bad place. So if you don't go and vote in the Georgia runoff, you have nobody but yourself to blame. And furthermore, the rest of us get to raise our middle finger to Georgia and say, you did this. So no, Sydney, there is no reason to not at least try. And then we will spend the next few years trying to figure out what the hell is wrong with this. Now, if they do rig it, which I think that they're going to, then we blame the government instead of blaming one single state of people who took Sidney Powell's lead. No. But that's what we're going to see here. I would rather blame the government than the people. I love blaming the government. All right, let's keep going on that. From Politico, Obama, criminal justice reformers lost a big audience with defund the police rhetoric. From Quint Forgy, former President Barack Obama suggested in a new interview that defund the police was little more than a snappy slogan that polarized many Americans and was ineffectual at producing broader reforms to the criminal justice system in the United States. In an interview that aired Wednesday on Snapchat's Good Luck America, Obama likened young activists to shoe companies marketing sneakers or musicians promoting their records, arguing that no such efforts to galvanize commercial support are no different in terms of ideas. If you believe, as I do, that we should be able to reform the criminal justice system so that it's not biased and treats everybody fairly, I guess you can use a snappy slogan like defund the police. But you know, you lost a big audience the minute you say it, which makes it a lot less likely that you're going to actually get the changes that you want done. Obama said, the key is deciding, do you actually want to get something done, or do you want to feel good among the people you already agree with? He added, and if you want to get something done in democracy, in a country that's big and diverse, you know, people that look like me, and Trayvon Martin, he could have been my son, you know. Then you got to be able to meet the people where they are and play a game of addition and not subtraction. Yeah, that's not going to go over well. That's not going to go over well at all. That is not going to go over well. That is... And AOC smacked back at this. We'll talk about this in just the next article, but that's not going to go over well with the progressives. Barack Obama got up on Good Luck America and told the progressive movement, we used you for your vote. Now stand back and stand the fuck in line. That is not going to go over well. That's not going to go over well at all. The former president is the latest prominent Democratic leader to express disapproval of the politically divisive phrase, which gained greater recognition over the summer amid nationwide protests against racial injustice and police brutality. Supporters of defunding the police have called for taxpayer dollars to be redirected away from law enforcement and toward mental health services and other social safety net resources. And, you know, I've explained this before, but we'll go through it one more time. You defund the police, you take away their money, you take away the taxpayers' ability to pay for them. The rich people hire private security. The poor people are fucked. The poor people look back at the rich people having private security, say, we want that too. Take the private security from the rich people and use taxpayer money to redistribute that private security to the rest of us. Congratulations, you've invented police. But Regardless, as I said, that's not going to go over with progressives. And let's see what AOC had to say about that one. That little fucking nematode. From the Blaze, Obama tells Democrats to focus on policy instead of squabbling over the word socialism, but wants AOC to get more airtime. In return, AOC and her friends lashed out at him. From Carlos Garcia, former President Barack Obama opined that Socialist Democrat Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez should get more exposure from the Democratic Party, even as he warned them to focus less on using the word socialism. And this goes right along with those snappy catchphrases like he was talking about with that. Obama made the comments during an interview with Vanity Fair contributor Peter Hamby, released on Wednesday. He was talking about the success of the Democratic National Committee when he appeared to criticize the party for not giving the firebrand socialist more airtime. The Democratic National Convention, I thought, was really successful considering the pandemic, and we really used technology wisely in order to overturn votes and make sure that we got rid of all those evil Trump votes. Obama claimed. But the fact that AOC only got 3 minutes or 5 minutes when she speaks to a broad section of young people who are interested in what she has to say, even if they don't agree with her with everything she says. You give her a platform. It's just like there may be some other young Democrats who come from more conservative areas who have a different point of view. Obama continued. Those people are evil because they're more conservative, and what they're conservative. They generally don't look like me. Everybody should look like me. Me. Obama continued. New blood is always good, and I say that as somebody who used to be the young, shiny, cool guy. But now is the gray-haired, old, grizzled vet. In a separate part of the interview, he explained why some Democrats were shying away from using the word socialism in their political platforms. Socialism is a loaded term for a lot of folks, Obama said. Once again, instead of talking labels and ideology, we should focus on talking about getting certain things done. Ironically, Ocasio-Cortez and other progressive members of the squad of congressional Democrats had lashed out at Obama and other Democrats who had cautioned against using far-left rhetoric that might scare voters away. The thing that critics of activists don't get is that they try playing the polite language policy game, and all it did was make them easier to ignore, she said in a tweet. It wasn't until they made folks uncomfortable that there was traction to do anything, even if it wasn't their full demands, she added. I wonder how long this is. Let's have a listen. If it's too long, we'll skip it, but I wonder how long this is.
Is cautioning progressives about the phrase defund the police, calling it polarizing and ineffective. In an interview with Snapchat, the former president says there's power in the word choice.
You've got to be able to meet people where they are. You can use a snappy slogan like defund the police, but you've lost a big audience the minute you say it. If you instead say, let's reform the police department so that everybody's being treated fairly, suddenly a whole bunch of folks who might not otherwise listen to you are listening to you.
Now, progressives like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib are hitting back. And Cori Bush, who just won her seat in Missouri, running on this platform, tweeted in part, "With all due respect, Mr. President, it's not a slogan. It is a mandate for keeping our people alive." With me now is CNN political reporter Maeve Reston. Maeve, this is the line that Democrats are walking, and we see former President Obama struggling with it.
Well, but he's absolutely right about it, Brianna, because as you know, during the lead up to the presidential election and afterwards, talking to Democratic strategists and Republican strategists about this, Republicans thought that this was their most effective attack on many of those members of Congress who ended up winning this year. It became a huge issue to fund the police because it doesn't sound like there's a lot of gray area in that slogan, even though many of the Republican attacks on Democrats were false, and Democrats had positions that were more in the middle, saying we could think about police reform. This ended up being really effective for Republicans, and I think that part of what
we can't go through with that one. We got way too much else on the slate for that. But yeah, like I said, that's not going to go over real well with the progressives and the kids that the progressives are recruiting. Congratulations, we used you for your vote. Now fall in line. Oh, I can't wait to see that civil war coming up on the horizon within the Democrat Party. Not the one that's coming up in the country, but the one within the party. I can't wait to see that one crop up and go. All right, let's keep moving here. From CBS News. Sorry, I thought that was auto-playing. Ivanka Trump deposed in ongoing lawsuit alleging misused inaugural funds. From Claire Himes and Catherine Watson. Ivanka Trump was deposed on Tuesday as a part of an ongoing lawsuit from the Washington, D.C. Attorney General, which alleges the misuse of funds from President Trump's inauguration in 2017. New court documents show D.C. Attorney General Carl Racine sued Mr. Trump's inaugural committee and the business overseeing Trump International Hotel in Washington back in January, claiming the nonprofit inaugural committee coordinated with the Trump family members to overpay for event space in a way that enriched the Trumps. Racine claims that the inaugural committee knew it was paying above market prices and failed to consider cheaper alternatives. Okay, take that same logic that you're using and now apply it to no-bid contracts in the government. You can't be pissed about it when Trump does it, but laud it as brave and stunning when everybody else in D.C. does it. And no, I don't think there should be any no-bid contracts for anybody, but the military gets no-bid contracts because they use that excess money to pay off their favorite politicians and keep us in war forever. And that shit needs to stop. But yeah, if this is absolutely going on with the Trump administration, then yes, we need to stop this too. But show me the documents. Let's keep going. From ABC, Trump files new case in lawsuit barrage looking to Wisconsin's legislature to flip the outcome. From Olivia Rubin and Matthew Mosk. President Trump continued to try and litigate his way out of his loss in the 2020 presidential contest with a new federal lawsuit he filed late last Wednesday in Wisconsin. The latest in a blizzard of suits around the country that have so far met with a resounding string of defeats. The president called on the courts to respond within 48 hours to the case, which takes exception to the broad availability of mail-in voting for the state's residents, latitude granted because of the risks associated with the coronavirus pandemic. Today's federal lawsuit in Wisconsin reveals an apparently coordinated effort to push a new form of balloting upon Wisconsin voters, said Jenna Ellis, one of the president's attorneys, adding that the rules of the election were changed at the last minute and guardrails against fraud were simultaneously lowered. No shit, I've been telling you about this since April. Attorneys for Trump have yet to demonstrate any fraud occurred. Wisconsin was one of many states to expand mail-in voting during the 2020 election to address widespread health concerns regarding the coronavirus pandemic. Democrats have not yet responded to Wednesday's filing, but one of the lead lawyers combating Trump's legal barrage, Mark Elias, tweeted late Wednesday night that he was tired of the repeated filings of frivolous lawsuits that are clogging the courts and misleading the public. It must stop. No, it must not. We must look through and figure out where all the holes are in our system, because it does seem that one side has taken the time to exploit them. Even if Trump manages to lose, his legacy, better than the record jobs, better than the record economy that we had right up until March of this year, his legacy could be shoring up the defenses of the electoral system, making us completely positive that our votes will count. That could be his legacy. That will go a lot further. That will live a lot further than even the 3 Supreme Court justices that he appointed and all of the lower court judges that he appointed. If he shores up the election system, that will be the greatest legacy to this country. So yes, let's find every little thing. Let's scrutinize every detail of this so people know where to look for next time. Like I said, even if he loses, let's find every single detail of this. Because he didn't concede. And that is, once again, that's the big difference between him and Hillary. Hillary conceded. So it looks like there are a few lawsuits going on in Wisconsin at this point against the state and against several mayors of large cities. I believe it is Madison, Milwaukee, and Green Bay. Republicans in Washington have defended the president's right to exhaust every legal avenue before accepting defeat, but experts said the sustained legal push is unprecedented, which translates to, stop looking over here, we're trying to hide something. Myrna Perez, director of the Brennan Center of Justice's Voting Rights and Elections Program at the New York University School of Law, has questioned how much the tolerance the courts will show for Trump's continued efforts to refight the 2020 election in courts. The president and his sympathizers have abused the presumption of good faith to a point where the courts are responding swiftly and clearly, and the lawyers don't want to be involved anymore, she said. In reaction to one case, Judge Stefanos Bibas, a former member of the Federalist Society, whom President Trump nominated to the Third U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in 2017, wrote that voters, not lawyers, choose the president. Ballots, not briefs, decide elections. Right, but if people are voting 10, 15 times, then they're taking votes away from other voters who want to decide the election. The latest lawsuit takes a different approach than the one used in nearly 3 dozen previous cases filed by Trump's campaign and his supporters, most of which have been rebuffed by judges because they failed to sufficiently document claims of fraud. This latest legal action never alleges that fraud occurred in Wisconsin, only that the risk of fraud was elevated by measures that the state officials took to account for the global pandemic, such as the expanded use of drop boxes and mail-in ballots. The suit alleges that the election was marred by the purposeful disregard of thoughtful legislative safeguards meant to prevent absentee ballot fraud. And yes, this is true, and our state legislature did nothing to try and make sure that this went through the proper legislative avenues. They just changed everything at the last minute. The lawsuit also brings the new proposed remedy, throwing out the outcome of the state's contest to the Republican-controlled state legislature. This suit asked the court to immediately remand this matter to the Wisconsin legislature to review and determine the appropriate remedy for the constitutional violations established, including any impact upon the allocation of the presidential electors for the state of Wisconsin. And I think that's part of what we've been seeing going on throughout the majority of this. It doesn't seem that he wants to go back and prove the fraud because they hid it well enough. I would assume that if there was fraud, it was hidden well enough that they couldn't do that. But, there were a couple events called Democracy in the Park that happened in Madison. And it was determined that it was illegal to use those ballots. I'm sorry. Let me back up again. It was determined that they needed to go through and have the Supreme Court weigh in on the legality of using the ballots that are collected in Democracy in the Park because they weren't an official Dropbox location. So an injunction was placed, and the head of the Wisconsin Election Commission was told, okay, you must keep these ballots separate from all of the other ballots that are getting Dropboxed in. And the head of the Wisconsin Election Commissions ran back and mixed them in with the rest of the ballots and said, oh, oops, well, they're already in there. Guess I didn't get the injunction in time. I guess we'll never be able to separate them. So there are a lot of questions with this. I don't buy everything at face value. And yes, if the head of the WEC did violate the injunction, then yes, it calls into question everything else that happened in this state. But unfortunately, with the track record we're seeing, I've got a feeling this one's just going to get thrown out too. So that's what we're seeing off of this. At least thanks for fighting the good fight. Let's keep going. From the Hill. We've still got a bunch to get to. And we're already 42 minutes in. From the Hill, Mo Brooks planning to challenge Electoral College votes. From Celine Castronuovo and Julie Grace Brufke. Republican Mo Brooks on Wednesday told reporters that he plans to challenge the Electoral College votes when Congress meets to certify the election for President-elect Joe Biden on January 6th. Brooks confirmed his plans to the Hill, repeating President Trump's claims that without evidence that the 2020 election has widespread cases of voter fraud, Politico first reported the news. And the weasel word. The weasel word again, widespread. I've been saying since the beginning, it's not going to be widespread. I'm doing this because, in my judgment, this is the worst election theft in the history of the United States. It's the worst, and if there was a way to determine the Electoral College outcome using only lawful votes cast by eligible American citizens. Then Donald Trump won the election, he told The Hill in an interview. That wasn't my Trump voice, that was my Brooks voice. I'm not focused on what is in the legal bleedings in all these lawsuits all over the country. There's some number of votes that probably were illegal in some different places to some degree. That's not abnormal, he added. The Alabama Republican said he believes the issue extends beyond the court cases filed by the Trump campaign, arguing that Congress is better suited to look into the matter. It is extremely difficult in a court of law to determine how many illegal votes were cast and who they were cast for. And that is one of the reasons why the FBI, the Justice Department, and the federal judiciary are wholly inadequate for handling the issue. And also one of the reasons why the writers of the U.S. Constitution determined that it would be unwise for federal courts that even the Supreme Court be the arbiter. Brooks argued that there are much broader, much bigger systemic flaws with America's election system. Number one is the 1993 National Voter Rights Act that was rammed through Congress by a Democratic House and Democratic Senate, signed by a Democratic president over the objection of Republican congressmen and Republican senators, he said. The chief evil in that legislation is that it makes it illegal for voter registrars to require proof of citizenship before allowing someone to register to vote. So that in and of itself opened the floodgates for illegal aliens and other non-citizens to register to vote. So, long story short on this one, because we got to keep this one moving here, Mo Brooks wants to get Congress involved and challenge all of this too. Which I would rather see Congress look into this than the judiciary, but that's going to take time. We are on a deadline here. And it raises an interesting question. What happens if we look back and find out that the person who took the inaugural address is not legally the president? What happens then? We don't know. I've got a feeling we might find out coming up in 2021. So we will see what's going on with that. Let's keep going. From Fox News, Trump says he'll veto defense bill unless Section 230 is terminated. Not a lot to go to with this one, but for the most part on this, it looks like we're going to try and do pork spending and pork laws. President Trump tweeted late Tuesday that he will veto the National Defense Authorization Act unless Congress repeals Section 230 of the 1996 Communications Decency Act, which critics say unfairly shields social media platforms from liability over items posted on their platforms. No. Not that I want you to spend more money on the military. You can stop that shit any fucking time you want. But no, we are not going to do pork in bills to try and get them passed, to try and get them through people. That's the part of the reason we're in the mess in the first place. That is the reason that we couldn't get a stimulus throughout the rest of the country, which may also turn out to be a blessing in disguise. Because all of those bills were so laden with pork, you couldn't do anything. You were not going to do pork bills to try and get your little pet projects passed. Single issue bills only. But please also stop spending on the military, because we spend way too much money on that. These opponents have been vocal that tech behemoths like Twitter and Facebook should no longer be shielded as a neutral platform when they operate more like a publisher. Yeah, there's not going to be a Twitter anymore at that point. Or a YouTube, for that matter. Do you really think that YouTube is going to take the risk of having me say, fuck the government, if there's no 230 to protect them? No, that's not going to happen. Section 230, which is a liability shielding gift from the U.S. to big tech, the only companies in America that have it, corporate welfare, is a serious threat to our national security and election integrity. Our country can never be safe and secure if we allow it to stand. The New York Post ran an explosive report that purported to show emails from Hunter Biden that linked his father to his Ukraine business dealings. Republican Senators Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, and Josh Hawley called on the heads of Twitter and Facebook at the time to testify. And nothing happened. But yeah, we're at the point. We're at the point where the president is trying to use, after railing against pork barrel bills, pork spending, and everything else under the sun, the president is trying to use that pork to get his pet projects done. And yes, please stop spending money on the military. Let's keep going. From the Daily Wire, O'Keefe, CNN tapes, executives discussed burying Hunter Biden story, advocating helping Biden with Miami Cubans. From Ryan Saavedra. Newly released videos by James O'Keefe's Project Veritas on Tuesday allegedly showed CNN executives discussing burying the Hunter Biden laptop story that was featured in the New York Post, as well as advocating for helping Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden with Cubans in Miami by countering narratives promoted by President Trump. O'Keefe said, according to Senior Vice President on CNN, Cynthia Hudson, recorded on Jeff Zucker's 9 a.m. telephone call at CNN, the reason that Cubans voted for Trump is because they're attracted to bullies. Trump has used the communism, socialism rhetoric as part of his hook for the Cubans in Miami. How that has resonated and how Biden team has not done enough to counter that, Hudson said. This is all that the only reason that they're supporting Trump is because of the narrative, and that narrative and the fact that, sadly, I have to say, there's a population that's very attracted to bullies. And no one is countering it properly in Florida. The Cubans are going to vote for Trump, she continued, and that's terrifying. And so I think that there's a big way to counter that narrative in Florida. Biden is a socialist that is not being taken advantage of. And we're not going to watch the video on this one yet. O'Keefe does good work. I like the work that he does. But the problem with O'Keefe is that nothing happens from it. It's just like when the Senate gets these big tech guys up on stage, parades them around, and asks them a bunch of questions. We hear about it, it gets retweeted for about 6 hours, and then nobody cares anymore. Nobody gives a fuck anymore. Nothing happens out of it. It's the same thing with Veritas. I respect the amount of information that's come out of Veritas. He's been sued numerous times, and he never loses. And of course, the left on Twitter will say, well, he just settles out of court, and then that's not a loss. Well, regardless, he's got a perfect record in court so far. I have no reason to doubt the veracity of what's in his claims. But if he's going to put this shit out there, then something needs to be done with it. Something needs to happen with it, is the problem. Nothing is happening with any of this. And like I said, I like O'Keefe. I like what he's doing. But if he's going to keep doing it, then something needs to happen with it. All right, let's keep going here. From the New York Post. Stacey Abrams founded group with Senate hopeful Warnock under investigation. From Ebony Bowden. A voter registration group led by Georgia Democratic Senate hopeful Reverend Raphael Warnock until earlier this year is under investigation for allegedly sending ballots to residents in other states, Georgia Secretary of State announced on Monday. The new Georgia Project, which is founded by failed Peach State gubernatorial candidate. Now, that's inaccurate, New York Post. Stacey Abrams is the rightful governor of Georgia. Just ask her. That's unfair, New York Post. In her mind, she is the rightful governor of Georgia. Was named as one of 4 voter registration groups under investigation for improper registration activities, Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger said. Oh, Raffensperger is suddenly concerned with election integrity. Weird. Raffensperger, a Republican, said the new Georgia Project, led by Warnock until January, when he announced he would run for the seat held by GOP Senator Kelly Loeffler, sent voter registration applications to New York City. The investigation comes ahead of 2 hotly contested runoff elections in Georgia on January 5th, in which Democrats hope they can snatch back 2 GOP seats and regain control of the Senate. Voting in Georgia when you're not a resident of Georgia is a felony, Raffensperger said at a press conference. Unless you pretend to be a resident long enough to get a utility bill and come in from San Francisco to vote, according to Andrew Yang. These third-party groups have a responsibility to not encourage illegal voting. If they do so, they will be held responsible, he continued. The new Georgia project was also investigated in 2014 over allegations it forged voter registration applications. In 2017, Warnock called the term voter fraud alarmist and denied the charges, the Washington Free Beacon reported. All of the groups named in the investigation have denied the charges. Of course they did. Like I said, I don't care who wins the election right now, as long as it's done fairly. And I keep seeing more and more stories as to why it might not have been done fairly. If we take nothing else out of 2020, shore up the elections and close up the loopholes. If we take nothing else away from 2020, shore that shit up. But they are under investigation right now. I got a brief one here from the CDC themselves. When to quarantine? Stay home if you might have been exposed to COVID-19. Local public health authorities determined and established the quarantine options for their jurisdictions. Quarantine is used to keep someone who might have been exposed to COVID-19 away from others. Quarantine helps prevent spread of disease that can occur before a person knows they are sick or if they are infected with the virus without feeling symptoms. People in quarantine should stay home, separate themselves from others, monitor their health, and follow directions from their state or local health department. People who have been in close contact with someone who has COVID-19, excluding people who have had COVID-19 within the past 3 months. All right, this is the point that I wanted to get to on this one here. So stay home and monitor your health. Stay home for 14 days after your last contact with a person who's had COVID-19. Watch for fever, cough, shortness of breath, or other symptoms. If possible, stay away from others, especially people who are at higher risk. So that's what they're saying. Stay home for 14 days, etc. Options. Options to reduce quarantine. CDC and other scientists have explored changing the current recommendations to quarantine for 14 days after last exposure. Oh, have they? Reducing the length of quarantine may make it easier for people to quarantine by reducing economic hardship if they cannot work during this time. In addition, a shorter quarantine period can lessen stress on the public health system, especially when new infections are rapidly rising. Local public health authorities make the final decision on how long quarantine should last in your communities they serve. While I like the fact that local officials are making the determination, not the CDC anymore, this is further proof that this is nothing but political at this point. No, just let your local people do it. We're not going to take responsibility for this anymore. CDC now recommends 2 additional options for how long quarantine should last based on local availability of viral testing. For people without symptoms, quarantine can end on day 10 without testing or on day 7 after receiving a negative test result. Get your politics out of my disease control, because this is all political at this point. All right, next one here from The Hill. Dr. Fauci has been named among People magazine's 2020 People of the Year from Marina Pitovsky. People magazine on Tuesday honored National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases Director Anthony Fauci as one of its People of the Year. The magazine called Fauci, a member of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, the doctor America needed in 2020, lauding him for providing steady guidance during the pandemic. It also touted Fauci's decades-long career, during which he has advised 6 presidents through some of the most dangerous health threats in the history of our country. Asked how he stays focused during the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, Fauci told the magazine, "You stay focused because you just have to do it. You dig deep, you grab yourselves by the bootstraps, and you say that you've got to do it. There's no other alternative, because if you don't do it, you're going to fail, and failure is not an option. So there's no room to get distracted, and there's no room at all to give up. You just have to keep going." It's amazing right now. Before coronavirus hit, nobody knew who Dr. Fauci was. I remember hearing the name for the first time. It was while I was reading news on Contemporary, and I said, who? Who the fuck is Fauci? Why do I care? And it appears that he's the person of the year because he stood back and he embattled against the evil orange man. But yes, he's going to be one of the people of the year. Probably right alongside Greta Thunberg. How dare you? All right, let's keep going here. From NPR, Obama, Bush, Clinton say they're willing to get coronavirus vaccine on camera. From Jacqueline Diaz, reading the way that NPR reads their news stories on air. Seeing what it is that they have to say. Until you fall asleep on the road and drive your car up a cliff. All right, let's see what they have to say here. Who better to promote a product than former president? How about three? Former presidents Barack Obama, George W. Bush, and Bill Clinton are willing to lend their star power for a good cause. Warhawk, Warhawk, Warhawk. That's all I have to say about those three. Saying this week that they could publicly take a coronavirus vaccine once it's available in the U.S. to encourage skeptical Americans to do the same. Hey, live chat audience, I've got a question for you. If you see W take the coronavirus vaccine, are you going to take it? Obama said that if Dr. Anthony Fauci, the country's top infectious disease expert, thought the vaccine was safe and effective, then he would get the shot. I promise you that when it's been made for the people who are less at risk, I will be taking it. I may end up taking it on TV or having it filmed, just so that people know that I trust the science. Obama said in an interview with Sirius XM's The Joe Madison Show that's set to air on Thursday, audio from which was posted to YouTube on Wednesday. Following Obama's comments, representatives for Bush and Clinton said they too would be on board for a public vaccination. I think Clinton should probably get the syphilis vaccination first, if there is such a thing. CNN reported that Freddie Ford, Bush's chief of staff, said the president reached out to Fauci and Dr. Birx, the White House coronavirus response team coordinator, to see if he could help promote the vaccination. First, the vaccines need to be deemed safe and administered to the priority populations, Ford told CNN. Then President Bush will get in line for his and will gladly do so on camera. Clinton's press secretary, Angel Urena, also told the news network that the 42nd president will be willing to take the vaccine in public and TV if that would urge Americans to do the same. In fact, and I'm going to tell you how I feel about these three presidents because they're all warhawks. In fact, if all three of them go and get the vaccine on TV, that is going to make me less likely to go and get it. That is going to make me want to be so goddamn far away from this vaccine that I never look at another needle again if those three people go and take it on TV. That is the biggest way to keep people from going and taking the vaccine, is to have these three people do the vaccine on TV. If you want me to take the vaccine, I would say don't offer it to these three people. Then I might consider it. But to see these three people grandstand about this, no. That makes me want to take it even less. God forbid I turn out like them, these three. But I don't plan on taking it anyway because, especially the fact that they hammered it through at light speed. I don't trust that shit. It's not about who the president was when the vaccine came out. It's about suspension of protocols. And yes, people have the right to try. If they want to take the vaccine, we've got the right to try Bill. If they want to take the vaccine that's untested by the FDA, that's on them. They have every right to do it. I'm just not going to be one of those people. All right, let's keep going. Kamala Harris hammered for tweet telling shoppers to do your part for small business hurt by COVID shutdowns. This is from The Blaze. From Blaze TV staff. In the latest episode of The Rubin Report, Dave Rubin discussed Kamala Harris's tweet encouraging shoppers to do your part to help small businesses while not seeming to understand that COVID lockdowns are destroying the small businesses she pretends to care about. Dave noted how Democrats like Kamala Harris and Governor Gavin Newsom seem to be completely unaware that the stay-at-home order in Los Angeles and lockdowns 2.0 measures being implemented by Democrats across the country may actually be worse for small businesses, unemployment, and the economy than the coronavirus pandemic. Dave also talked about Orwellian Vermont Governor Phil Scott, who encouraged kids to snitch on their parents, Thanksgiving plans, Joe Biden's fractured his foot, and Michael Moore encouraging electors to go against the will of American voters. Yeah, we're not going to watch Dave Rubin's show because it's like an hour long. I listened to it yesterday. But yeah, I mean, Dave's absolutely right on this one. All that we saw from the lockdowns was the government getting the small business competitors out of the way of people like Amazon, Walmart, your big game grocery stores. All the big industries suddenly have so much less competition because the government got the small businesses out of the way. But thanks for encouraging us to shop there, Kamala. Let's go. Let's keep going. From the New York Post. All right, we're almost done here. We're going to power through the rest of this here and head on out and get done. Like I said, there was a bunch today. From the New York Post, Prince Harry, COVID-19 is what we get for messing with Mother Nature. It's a religion, folks. From Hannah Sparks, Prince Harry's lofty wish is for every person to be the raindrop that falls from the sky and relieves the parched ground. Is that so much to ask? At the end of the day, nature is our life source, the red-headed royal rebel said in a recent interview for Waterbear, a streaming platform dedicated to environmental documentaries. The Duke of Sussex is also described the COVID-19 pandemic as the ecological retribution, urging viewers to consider it as a wake-up call. So I see that, yes, we have returned back to the fact that coronavirus is the pagan god's way of punishing the masses for messing with their pagan world or whatever the fuck. I don't even know. But, yeah, that's weird. That's weird. They're anti-religious unless it's their pagan science religion. Let's keep going. From the Blaze. High school teacher allegedly naked and masturbating during video conference, police sources say. From Dave Urbanski. A high school teacher from Staten Island was naked and masturbating during a video conference on Monday and is now under investigation, law enforcement sources told the New York Daily News. The unnamed teacher works at Tottenville High School. Well, not anymore. And the incident occurred during a Google Meet call, sources added to the paper. The New York City Police Department confirmed it was investigating a Monday complaint from the school, but revealed no details, the Daily News said. The investigation is active and ongoing at this time, a police spokeswoman told the paper Tuesday night. It wasn't clear if the teacher intentionally exposed himself or if the video call involved students, the Daily News added. Well, if the police are involved, I'm going to say outright that it involves students, that it involved minors of some point. If the police are involved, minors are involved. I can tell you that right off the bat. Because under any other circumstance, it would have been a civil case. But yeah, if the police are involved, minors. We're on the other end of the screen. And do please remind me, people in the live chat, when is the proper time in the middle of a Zoom call to whip it out and start beating off? I never got that answer during the Tubin incident. But this dude just started fucking tubining. What is wrong with this world? What is wrong with this world? Alright, let's keep going. From the Daily Wire, New Mexico City Council bucks Democratic governor, votes to reopen. No evidence lockdowns beat the virus. From Tim Pierce. A New Mexico City Council voted to disregard Democratic Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham's coronavirus lockdown measures and reopen business and schools. The Roswell City Council has held an emergency session on Monday evening over the governor's lockdown regulations, many of which have remained in place since the outbreak of the coronavirus in the United States in March. The council had voted in July not to enforce the governor's orders, leaving all enforcement actions up to the state police. During the meeting, Councilman Jacob Roebuck introduced a motion for the city manager to restart schools and return the city government to normal operations. The resolution also says the city manager should seek permission from the city before shutting down any city service or building more than 48 hours, according to KOAT. Now, COVID-19 is a highly contagious virus that is widespread and can be fatal to those with compromised health and the elderly, Roebuck said in his opening comments. Arguing for the resolution to help stop the spread of this highly contagious virus, the governor of the state of New Mexico has implemented a series of lockdowns and other restrictions. The negative side of these lockdowns has been a financial impact, especially brutal on the poor, a negative educational impact on our children, including the fact that teachers are beating off on camera, an increase of depression and suicide, and an increase of domestic violence, an increase in drug and alcohol abuse, and a decrease in preventative care, including vaccines special to children and health screenings, especially cancer, Roebuck said. There is no evidence that we can snuff out the virus with shutdowns, he added. Yeah, and we've got more evidence that the lockdowns don't work than we do for widespread voter fraud, but at least we're hearing out the evidence for lockdowns don't work. So, we'll see what happens off of this. We'll see if New Mexico actually opens up or if they take punitive action against the municipality, including withholding state aid. But good on them. Assess your own level of risk. And if your level of risk doesn't include you living in that particular city, then you'll probably find somewhere else to live. All right. Few more. From Fox News, Politico reporter deems RNC's Ronna McDaniel too dishonest to be asked for comment on magazine feature. From Brian Flood. A Politico reporter declared that Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel is so dishonest and untrustworthy that she doesn't deserve to comment on a story that mentioned her by name 18 times. This isn't new. Politico hates the RNC. This isn't news. But, he's coming out on the record and saying it, but for the most part, this is just what's been happening on Twitter for the last 4 years. Let's keep going. Planned Parenthood's Pennsylvania chapter rocked by racism allegations, executive director resigns, from Ash Shao. Another left-leaning organization is at the center of racism allegations. Planned Parenthood's Pennsylvania chapter has been accused of numerous racial transgressions, including board members allegedly making racist comments and ignoring staff complaints. The Daily Beast reported. A group of staffers demanded the chapter's executive director resign, which she did Tuesday morning. Every staff member of Planned Parenthood Advocates for Pennsylvania signed an open letter demanding the organization's executive director, Emily Callan, step down over the allegations. The letter also accused her of mismanagement. In addition to staffers, more than 900 others signed on to the letter, including several state legislators. After Callan resigned, the state staff members, calling themselves Save PPPA, released a statement. Our biggest demand has been met, the statement said. This fight is not over for us. The staff at PPPA is committed to fighting white supremacy in our workplace. Here's an interesting thought. If you're so concerned about racism, distance yourself from Margaret Sanger. First off. And second off, stop putting your buildings exclusively in poor neighborhoods in large left-leaning cities. If you're so concerned about white supremacy. I don't believe you anymore. It's not that Planned Parenthood isn't racist. They are. They're incredibly racist. But right now, the news story is that they were incredibly racist and they got caught. So, good on them. Good on them for trying to go off and virtue signal to try and make people not look at the fact that they put their clinics almost exclusively in poor black neighborhoods. All right, a couple more, then we'll do a thing that I like and a thing that I hate and head on out of here. From CNBC, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise is the latest tech company to leave Silicon Valley and is moving to Houston. From Jessica Burstinsky, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise is the latest tech company to shift its focus away from Silicon Valley, announcing Tuesday that it will relocate its headquarters from San Jose to Houston. HPE's largest U.S. employment hub, Houston is an attractive market to recruit and retain future diverse talent, and is where the company is currently constructing a state-of-the-art new campus, the company said in its fourth quarter earnings release. It is unclear how many employees will move, or the move will affect, although the company said no layoffs will be with the move. HPE will keep the San Jose campus and will consolidate some of its Bay Area sites there. For its fourth quarter, the company reported $7.21 billion versus $6.88 billion expected, according to a consensus estimate from Refinitiv. 0.37 cents a share adjusted compared with 0.34 cents a share expected per Refinitiv. So, Silicon Valley and the people that go to work for Silicon Valley wrecked the California economy, drove their taxes through the roof, drove their corporate taxes through the roof. So now, the Silicon Valley moguls are going to move to Texas, take advantage of their low taxes, and then vote to raise the taxes through the roof. I wonder if California will turn red again. It's a pipe dream, I know, because the weather attracts as many people as the big names, the big companies, and the big jobs do, but I wonder if California will ever turn red. All right, last one here, then we'll do a thing that I like and a thing that I hate and head on out of here. From Fox News, carjackings in Minneapolis up 537% last month, report. It defies all civility and any shred of common human decency, authorities said, from David Arrow. Violent carjackings have surged in Minneapolis in recent months, swelling to numbers that officials have deemed staggering, according to reports. Carjackings are up 537% when compared to the previous November, according to the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. Defund the police! Defund the police! Defund the police! The numbers are staggering, said police spokesman John Elder. It defies all civility and any shred of common human decency. Yeah, I'm looking forward to people moving away from Minnesota and moving here into Wisconsin. Leave your voting over there, but if that's what Minneapolis is going to do, then it's lost. Let them wallow in their filth for a few years, and then see how willing they are to try and change their city policies to try and attract industry and good people back to the city. Because I'm kind of interested to see this. But yes, at this point, people are getting bolder and bolder, knowing that the police are being defunded more and more. And police are retiring out of the city, going to other cities. They're leaving. We saw just, 2 weeks ago when the Minneapolis City Council was begging for surrounding agencies to lend them people to come in and help them out. And now we see why. 537%. 5 times as many carjackings. You can bet that I'm not going to be driving through there. Even if I do go west and go to Montana, go visit Jake, or Spokane and visit Chris Lokes, I will go around Minneapolis at this point. And I used to love going to Minneapolis when I was a kid. But, yeah. All right, that's going to be it for the news for the day. We're going to end the day on a thing that I like and a thing that I hate, and head on out of here for the day. So, thing that I like today, and unfortunately I can't put this up on the screen because my sister decided to give her children very, very unique names. And I love my sister, and I love my nieces and nephew, but unfortunately with the very, very unique names, I can't really put that up there because it'll be a self-dox, and a self-dox on my sister and her kids. But my sister sent me a Snapchat last night, and then she sent me the actual image. I shared it with a couple of my friends. I guess she's been doing this for a few years, and I didn't even realize it. But my nieces and nephew are Santa age right now, the age where they don't really question the existence of Santa Claus. So my sister has started sending letters from Santa to the kids, urging them to be good, as usual. You know, you get your usual be good because otherwise Santa won't come kind of thing. But on top of that, now she's also urging the kids to figure out which toys that they don't use and get them in a box so Santa can pick them up, get them cleaned up and fixed up, and sent out to other good little boys and girls across the world. It's framed as trying to help Santa ease his burden on the holiday season. But my sister's taking these toys and giving them out to charity, and I love that. More parents should be doing that, and I hope that more parents do. I know that when I pointed this out to Britt from the Freckles and Britt show, she had pointed out that she was doing something similar with her kids, just trying to help them make sure that they give more out to charity. But encouraging this next generation, Generation Z and Generation Alpha, into more charity is an honorable thing, even if we do have to use some of the myths that we didn't like when we were kids. It's still a good way to get more charity out there, and I'm glad to see it. Private charity trumps the government charity 10 times out of 10, because the government takes way too much off the top. And so I'm glad to see it. All right, and with that, we're going to do a thing that I hate and head on out of here. So, thing that I hate today comes to us courtesy of the New York Times, a former newspaper. Nike and Coca-Cola lobby against Xinjiang forced labor bill. Business groups and major companies like Apple have been pressing Congress to alter legislation cracking down on imports of goods made with forced labor from persecuted Muslim minorities in China. Yes, I can see why Nike would not want to have a bill out there that could possibly stop imports of for companies that use slave labor in China. I mean, if there was any chance at this point that I was going to go back and buy another pair of Nikes after they virtue signaled with the Colin Kaepernick thing, it's over at this point. Let's see what Anna Swanson has to say quick. Nike and Coca-Cola are among the major companies and business groups lobbying Congress to weaken a bill that would ban imported goods made with forced labor in China's Xinjiang region, according to congressional staff members and other people familiar with the matters, as well as lobbying records that show vast spending on the legislation. The bill, which would prohibit broad categories of certain goods made by persecuted Muslim minorities in an effort to crack down on human rights abuses, has gained bipartisan support. Passing the House in September by a margin of 406 to 3, congressional aides say that it has backing to pass the Senate and could be signed into law by either the Trump administration or the incoming Biden administration. But the legislation, called the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, has become the target of multinational companies, including Apple, whose supply chains touch the far western Xinjiang region, as well as business groups including U.S. Chamber of Commerce lobbyists have fought to water down some of its provisions, arguing that while they strongly condemn forced labor and current atrocities in Xinjiang, the Act's ambitious requirements could wreak havoc on supply chains that are deeply embedded in China. China. And yes, I mean, I don't think I have to go over why I hate this so much, but Nike, and we've known this since we were kids, it's not hidden. Nike will come out and say, "Oh no, everything's above board here," but we've all been joking about it since we were in middle school. Cheap child labor in China for 5 cents a day to make those little shoes. Now, I have a pair of Nikes. They're just about falling apart at this point. I use them as running shoes. But I can tell you right now, once they fall apart completely, the next pair of shoes that I own is not going to have the swoosh on the side. I can't, because I bought them before the Kaepernick thing. I spent the money on them, and I'm going to get my money's worth out of them until they fall apart and can't stay on my foot anymore. I will beat these things to crap. But you can better bet that that was the last pair that I will ever buy. I'm not going to be like those guys that just go out and burn their Nike stuff because, well, I'm going to burn it because Colin Kaepernick is promoted by them. No, you spent the money on it. Nike's already taken your money to the bank. Use it until it falls apart, and then don't buy another one. But, yeah, it's just like Burger King. I stopped going to Burger King because they virtue signaled on the pink tax. It's not that I don't think it's a problem. I just don't need a political lesson when I'm getting a fucking burger. And I was almost to the point where I was ready to forgive them and enough time had passed. And then they came out with that cringe-ass virtue signaling video about the lemongrass, which once again, if they'd have just started feeding the lemongrass to the cows and not said anything, I wouldn't have cared. But the virtue signal, it's the same thing with Nike right now. Even if they got down, they started to improve their business practices, if they kicked Colin Kaepernick to the curb, I would sit back and think, you know what? Maybe it's time for me to buy a pair of Nikes. You know, those little Chinese hands, they're really good at stitching. They are really comfortable. I'll give them that. Those little Chinese hands make great stitching. It's so precise. And given the abuse that pair of shoes has taken, it's actually a good quality pair of shoes. But the fact that they will come out and say, no, don't pass this bill that takes advantage of, or prohibits taking advantage of slave labor by Muslims in China, no. They have no reason to have my money anymore at that point. And a lot of people haven't heard about this. I wouldn't have even heard about this had I not listened to Michael Knowles yesterday. I would have completely missed this one. But definitely something to pay attention to with this. And this is the thing that I hate. Fuck you, Nike, for doing this. And that is going to be it for the day. I'm going to try and get back here tonight, which we've been a little bit busy at work, and that's part of the reason I worked 12 hours yesterday, and I'm in such a fog right now, but I'm going to try and get back here tonight so we can play some video games. We haven't done that in a couple weeks because of the holiday, but we'll take some time, we'll relax, we'll play some video games, and not talk about how much we're getting fucked by the upper 1%, and just have a good time and calm down. So hope to see you later on tonight for some more Legend of the Seven Stars, some good old Super Mario RPG. Definitely looking forward to that. Hopefully we'll see you tonight. Otherwise, we'll be back here tomorrow with more Contemporary and reading the names of everybody who chatted in the live chat. Hope to see you there. Until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.